Hey, it is L.A. Lloyd, and today is the first time for Greta Van Fleet to co-host the Rock 30. Welcome, guys. Pleasure to meet you, and please introduce yourself.
Hey, glad we're here.
I'm Danny.
I'm Jake.
Well, the first time I saw you guys, and the only time, believe it or not, was at Austin City Limits Music Festival. It was a hot afternoon, but man, you guys knocked me off my socks. I mean, it was such a great performance. The crowd was totally into it, and I was just kind of curious what your thought was for that festival, and maybe just festivals overall, playing those live.
That was a fun one. I definitely remember that one. I had a couple family members that were in the area, and I had no idea, and they reached out that day. So it was it was a party, but it was really fun. And I think festivals in a general sense, they're very different from one another. Each festival has its own sort of personality. Some of them are just outright encouraging and inspiring and fun, and it's all about the audience too.
Right.
And that one was definitely one of those for me.
Well, and the cool thing about Austin City Limits Music Festival, I mean, you have such a diverse range of, genres. I mean, I've seen everyone from Metallica to Paul McCartney there. I mean, it's, just a crazy festival over the years. So my first experience with you guys was there for sure. So we're literally just a couple days behind the release date of the Battle at Gardens Gate. I mean, April 16th. Had this been always the definite date you guys chose, but because of COVID, did it kind of get shuffled around a little bit?
Well, I suppose, the record was kind of done last summer, but yeah, very much the dependency on when the record was going to come out was sort of based on, the COVID and pandemic restraints. It was like now we had to go back and sort of re-strategize when we were going to release it.
Right.
But it is, I think it is surprising that we ended up releasing in April, because I think we've had so many previous releases that were in April. I mean, a lot of what we've done was we've released pretty much everything in April, so
a good month
there's some continuity for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of impressed with so many bands that actually released their albums last year. I mean, we were right in the middle of the pandemic, and it's a long ways from being over also, but I know you guys want to be out there performing live. Is it just kind of challenging, being in the wait mode right now because the album is out, and obviously you want to be out there playing those songs live?
Yeah, it's really tough. When we first started recording this album, it was right off of a tour, and then we put a halt on recording and went right back on tour, and it, kind of finished it all up in the midst of touring. And a lot of these songs deserve to live on stage. So it's been kind of tough, especially deciding when to release it. And, with this whole thought of we want to get out and play, and that's the whole ethos of our existence as a band, is live performance. So it has been pretty tough.
Well, I kind of wanted to look at the positive aspects, obviously you do have a lot more downtime right now to work on your music and your craft, but did this extra time give you guys a chance to maybe develop your songwriting or, try something that you weren't originally planning on doing just because you had the time, available to be able to do so?
I mean, yeah, it's been interesting. The entire pandemic has sort of been a double-edged sword for us. I mean, on one side of that blade, you have got, the downside of not being able to tour, not being able to sort of represent the music that we've sort of crafted in a studio sense live. But on the other end of the blade, there's, we've been able to sort of redirect our creativity in many other ways, in many aspects, things we haven't been able to do in the past. I mean, we've been touring consistently for the last 3 years, nonstop, period. And I suppose being able to sort of focus on, the visual representation of a lot of the music. I mean, we've been able to sort of co-direct every single music video, and there's a lot going on with our future endeavors with that on this particular album. But we've sort of garnered two more songs that made the record. We sort of finished last summer and we said, okay, we'll go start writing a new record. We came back from the countryside with 2 songs. That was Caravel and the Barbarians. And we said, you know what? These don't belong on a new record. These sound very much like they belong on the Battle at Gardens Gate still. Right. We hadn't, graduated from the project yet. And so we gained 2 songs based on, the moving the date of the release of the album. And yeah, it's been a very positive year for us, and as well as being able to sort of digest what's gone on.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, you guys were touring nonstop pretty much for like 3.5 years, and all of a sudden you literally just hit the brakes and it came to a standstill. So what was that adjustment period like? Because, I mean, every day you're getting pulled from every direction. You're on stage, you're going to the next city, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like, whoa, we got a second to breathe here. So what was that adjustment period like for you guys?
It was very, very... It was kind of a long adjustment period.
Really?
I don't know, maybe we're still adjusting, but that's kind of because it forces everyone, not just us, but everyone who's, part of this pandemic to get used to this domesticity sort of feeling, and you're kind of isolated. And to an extent, we are isolated often on tour because you're traveling and you're constantly traveling, and it's just your team, your family that's traveling, but you don't have this human contact anymore.
Right.
And that was probably the toughest part. Seeing family, so we kind of just had to stick with ourselves. And, I think we going out, like Jake was saying, to start writing potentially a new album, start diverting our creative involvement. And, we just had to do the things that we know keep us sane and make us happy, because we have to be busy. Otherwise we will go insane.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you kind of touched on, moving into video more and co-directing, because that kind of leads me into my next question, because you really dialed it in on Heat Above. I mean, I saw something that I could, really see a whole new level for the band, at least from a visual standpoint. So I was just kind of curious, was it just because you had more time to really work on that? And as you said, is this going to be kind of a lead into future videos that are going to be a little bit more in depth than what you've done in the past?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely think it's 100%, because we've actually had the time to do it. And that was something that we've always been really interested in sort of involving ourselves in. I mean, we all kind of grew up with, many influences, music being one major one, but, literature and philosophy and film.
Right.
Like, we were pictorially very influenced very early on. And so that's something we've all kind of wanted to do. We've always kind of wanted to sort of dive into the visual aspects of the group. And I don't think that we've ever had the time really to sort of craft the visual representation of our own work, really.
Right.
So I think, it's like everything else that we do. We're 100% involved in every aspect of everything that someone sees, feels, hears, touches. It sifts through our hands at one point or another. So to answer your question, I think we've had more time to be able to focus on that aspect and to be able to further, craft future endeavors, visually.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely tell it in the Heat Above video for sure. Do you feel like you guys have a better sense of direction that you want the band go moving forward, simply because you've just had this extra time to kind of focus on, I'm sure a lot of things, obviously your music and the videos, but there's also the behind the scenes stuff. Do you feel like you're more focused on how you can maybe be better or feel better while you're touring when you go head first into it again?
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting, everything just kind of kicked off so quickly at the very beginning stages, and we were just on the train, we were on for the ride. Start touring, you start doing all this stuff, and then you realize there's so much more to it, and we hadn't had the time. 1 second, we got a train going by.
There we go.
Yeah.
I used to live right beside a track as well. It was a bitch doing interviews.
So you get
it. But carry on.
Yeah, we hadn't really had much time in the previous years, but like Jake said, it's always been almost equally a part of our creative development as a band is visuals as well. And 7, 8 years ago, at the very beginning stages, we were always out in the yard filming things and correlating it with our music. And so it was something that we were actually very excited to do. That was part of the whole pandemic double-edged sword positive aspect of it.
Well, from a global standpoint, I mean, the past few years have definitely been quite trying for, all of us with the civil unrest we've witnessed on TV and even in our own cities that we live in. And I'm not trying to make this a political question, but are you optimistic about the future? Do you feel better today than, say, maybe a year or two ago from a social standpoint?
I don't, maybe in particular, maybe socially, I'm not sure that in terms of even touring or sort of interactive aspects that too much will have changed between now and maybe a couple of years ago. But I think we're very much existing in a different world of leadership as well. And it's sort of becomes a bit of a sociological horizon in a way. I think that there's an awakening and there's sort of a lot of I think that there's a lot of unity in this country right now too.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how that influences sort of touring and how that influences the collective, I suppose.
Right. With three brothers in the band and Danny pretty much being with you guys since things really started ramping up, do you guys have this closeness where you sometimes, ideas may musically just kind of happen organically without there being any type of verbal communication? It's just something starts and then the next one goes into it. I mean, do you guys have that kind of closeness when you're songwriting?
All the time.
Absolutely.
Really?
From the very beginning,
Cool.
The origins of Greta Van Fleet kind of revolve around jamming and the blues, and that was kind of how we all learned to communicate with each other. And that is why it is something that, will always kind of be around and definitely be special to us, because it is, I think, in what we're doing and in rock and roll, it is important to have that communication. It makes you a better musician. It helps you learn who you're playing with,
right.
and understand.
Allows you the freedom.
It allows you certain freedoms.
Yeah.
It really, I couldn't see us doing it any other way.
Well, when you guys first started talking about doing your own original music, obviously you want to, do your own songs. I get that. But was there something that, overall, just looking at rock in general, I mean, had it become homogenized to you guys and you just wanted to kind of do something a little different than what every other song on the radio sounded like? Is that kind of what led you into, the way you guys decided to go?
I think it was, it was another very organic sort of journey to sort of to the origin of this group and the sounds that we make is a collective. We grew up with a lot of records. We grew up in households that were very music centric, and it was like what we were listening to. Blues as again, the sort of basic soul of the group,
right.
Really is where we all we all bring something different to the sound of Greta Van Fleet, but I think collectively what sort of ties us together is the blues and the roots of that. And so these are the origins of our sound as well. And again, this is just our truth. This is something that we were born with, something we were raised with, something that we identify with, not as artists, but as people, as human beings. And I think that sort of truth and that sort of search has sort of led us here. And I don't, I'm not so much saying that we kind of did anything intentionally, really. Whenever we ever listened to radio and said, well, let's write something that's completely sort of, in a different sort of direction or something, it was all kind of came from the roots of how we were raised and where we were born in Michigan and Detroit.
So who is some of your blues heroes? I mean, if you could name up 4 or 5 on your hand there.
4 or 5, 10 or 15.
20 or 30? Yeah.
Lightning Hopkins, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Son House, B.B. King, Freddie King, all the Kings.
Yeah. How about Stevie Ray and a more modern, kind of modern, I would guess, Stevie Ray Vaughan?
Stevie Ray Vaughan is fantastic. Yeah. And a godlike guitar player as well at that.
For sure.
But you even have R.L. Burnside's son, Cedric Burnside, who has a record out. And that's incredible contemporary blues. Then you have the White Stripes, which is another great blues band. Yeah. And then, there's so many too. It's it's crazy. Lenny Kravitz,
Clapton.
Yeah.
A lot of contemporary blues still out there at the form of it. I think we probably still like to think of ourselves as probably a blues band as well.
I can totally see that. I mean, that's where the foundation's at, man, and that's what you thrive on. I love that. Let's talk about the new single, Heat Above. Obviously, we've talked about the video a little bit more. Was all of these songs written prior to the pandemic, or was this one done once you kind of had to come off the road and be in lockdown?
No, it's kind of a mix, both. I'd say 40% of the album had ties to, our existing selves. And I would say the rest of the album was actually written in the studio or in midst of touring and on the road during that time. 2 of the songs came from the pandemic.
Gotcha.
That would be Caravel and The Barbarians, which is kind of a really funny thing. We're kind of, the world shut down. We set out to write a new album and try to stay creative. And the first 2 songs that kind of came about really kind of still had ties with the Battle at Garden's Gate. And they just embodied, the thematics, the storytelling. And, so it was, then we had to wait until you could record again because there was no question that we were going to add 2 more songs to the album. There was no rush at that point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you don't even really think about that. Just the hardship of actually getting studio time and making it safe for, all the crew and everyone around you. I mean, it's just a lot involved. The way we like to close out the Rock 30 is to do a couple of artist picks from each one of you. And it can be from the new album. It can be from previous work as well. But we always like to play a couple of extra tracks besides the singles. So one of you guys started off.
Nice. I'd love so we suggest a song and you play it?
Yeah, that's it. And tell me why you chose it.
I would like to hear Seed of Memory by Terry Reid.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Very nice.
And I don't know why my brain is going here, but there's a song that we kind of recorded a little while back, and it's called "Always There." And if I have to pick one from our own, if I had to pick one of our own to listen to, I'd say give that one a listen.
So why do you like that one so much? What is it that stands out? I mean, because to me, when I ask people to do this, like, oh man, this is hard to pick just one song. But why did you pick that one?
I picked that one because, it was kind of a personal sort of thing. We were recording Anthem of the Peaceful Army, and it was originally supposed to go on that album. And the way it turned out, it just didn't really sonically fit with the rest of the album.
Right.
So we kind of left it alone as it's, and it lives alone. And it's one of those songs that kind of, at least for me, I always overlook it. I always forget that it's there.
Yeah. And then you go back. That is one of those songs. And then you go back and listen to it and go, oh shit, that's pretty good. I forgot we did that actually. It was
written and recorded in the studio in like a day.
Yeah,
it was one of those really magical experiences.
Very nice. Well, glad to play on one today for the fans on the Rock 30. I'm really glad you got the new album out, and obviously I'm looking forward to you guys hitting the road again. And I hope you'll definitely add Austin to one of those cities that you come through again, man, because we love you down here, that's for sure. And of course, this show goes out all over the country and in Canada and Mexico and parts of Europe. So you got fans listening from everywhere today, man.
Well, beautiful.
We hope to see you soon in person.
Yes, absolutely. Face to face rather than screen to screen.
Right. I hear you. Well, thanks for being on the Rock 30 today, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.